Insects are the most fascinating creatures on Earth. They're also the most successful, adapting to nearly every known habitat. There are more than 1 million kinds of insects, and they can be found just about everywhere in the world. Let's find out more about the incredible world of insects. A lot of animals look like insects, but they're not. Spiders, like this tarantula, aren't insects. And neither are centipedes, although this one is eating an insect. Millipedes aren't insects either. And neither are scorpions. All of these animals are related to insects. They're cousins. They belong to a group of animals to which insects belong, called arthropods. Let's see how all these creatures are similar. First, insects like this walking stick and all other arthropods are invertebrates. That means they don't have a backbone, like you and I do. Next, all insects and all arthropods have jointed legs. Look at the joints in this walking stick's legs. And finally, all insects like this hissing roach and all arthropods have a hard outer covering. The reason an insect's body is hard is because its outer covering is actually its skeleton. That's right, the insect's skeleton is on the outside of its body, not on the inside, like it is with you and me. That's part of the reason why many insects appear shiny, because of their hard outer covering. The outer covering of an insect is called its exoskeleton. Exo means outside. The insect's exoskeleton is like a suit of armor and helps to protect the insect. Insects have a lot in common with other arthropods, but they also have many differences. Let's examine an insect in much closer detail to see how they differ from most other arthropods. Insects are among the few arthropods which have 3 body parts: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. It's easy to spot the 3 body parts on some insects, like this wasp. Here's its head, its thorax, and its abdomen. But what about this giant water bug? Can you spot its 3 parts? Here's the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. And what about this walking stick? Here's the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. Spiders, by the way, only have 2 body parts: the head and thorax, which are combined into 1 part, and the abdomen. Insects are the only adult arthropods with 6 legs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Can you count the legs on this darkling beetle? And what about this ant? Or this backswimmer? They all have 6 legs. A spider has 8 legs. It is not an insect. The same with scorpions. 8 legs. It's not an insect. Centipedes aren't insects. They have more than a dozen legs. Millipedes aren't insects. They can have more than 100 legs. Let's take a closer look at each of the insect's body parts. The head of an insect contains many of the insect's most important organs. And these include the insect's antennae, its eyes, and its mouth parts. One of the first things you notice when you look at an insect's head is its antennae. Every insect has a pair, and they are used for sensing the world around them. That's why you often see an insect waving its antennae about as it explores its world. Antennae are used mostly for touching and smelling, and this helps insects identify their own kind and whether or not they're male or female. Insects also communicate with their antennae. When two ants meet each other, you often see them touching antennae. They are actually passing chemical messages from one ant to another. Antennae come in a variety of shapes and sizes. Some are short and fan-like. Others are short and beaded. Some look like whips, while others are long and thin. And still others look like feathers. Each style of antenna are better at some things more than others. Insects also sense their world through their eyes. Here, a praying mantis grooms itself under a full moon. The mantis, like many insects, has a large pair of compound eyes. These are the most important for vision. And several simple eyes, which are probably sensitive to only light and dark. The mantis's 3 simple eyes are located here in the middle of its forehead. Compound eyes are made up of tiny sections called facets. Each facet is a lens, and the more facets, the better the insect's vision. That's why dragonflies, which have a lot of facets in their eyes, have such good vision. And so do damselflies, which is probably why they respond so quickly to the slightest movement. Beetles have poor vision. That's because their eyes are tiny and have few facets. Insects eat in a lot of different ways. Some, like this grasshopper, are chewers. They chew the food they eat. The mouth parts of many chewers, like this stick insect, include palps, or feelers, which are extremely sensitive and which give the insect information about the food it is eating, including taste and smell. Palps are also used like fingers to help manipulate food. After which the insect spreads apart its palps so that it can chew the food with its jaws. Sticks are big eaters, and just a few of them can destroy a rose garden in a very short time. Predators, like praying mantises, are chewers as well. This one is devouring a cricket it has just caught. Mantises have powerful jaws, and they can easily bite through the hard skeletons of most insects. Can you spot the palps on this mantis? They're quite small compared to those on other insects. Many insects don't chew at all. The butterfly has a long sucking tube, which it uncoils to stick deep into flowers to obtain their sweet nectar. The tube is longer than its legs. Bees eat mostly by lapping up nectar from flowers, but it's not easy to see. In this view, you can clearly see the mouth part that is used to lap up food, in this case, some honey. The next insect body part is the thorax. This is where you find the insect's legs and wings. Insect legs are varied according to how they're used. Some are used mostly for climbing and clinging. Some for running. Some for swimming. And some for grasping. These threatening legs belong to the praying mantis, one of the great predators of the insect world. We've already seen how it uses its powerful jaws to devour insects. But before it can devour them, it has to catch them, which it does with lightning speed. The strike is so fast, it's easy to miss. So we've slowed one down in order to see it more clearly. A cricket passes in front of the mantis, jumps, and is caught in mid-air. There's a brief struggle, but once in the mantis's powerful legs, impaled on its spines, there is no escape for the cricket. Insect legs are used in many ways. Bees use their hind legs for gathering pollen. Crickets can hear with their legs, and butterflies can taste with theirs. Ants use their legs to carry and drag things. This ant is attempting to drag a dead fly many times larger than itself back to its colony. It's quite a struggle as the fly keeps getting caught up in grass and twigs. But ants are persistent, and this one will eventually succeed, dragging the fly dozens of feet. One of the most remarkable abilities of insects is their ability to fly. Most insects have wings, and of those who do, most have 2 pairs of wings. Can you spot the 2 pairs of wings on this butterfly? What about this beetle? You say it doesn't have 2 pair? Here they are. The first pair serves as a protective case and covers the second pair, which is used for flying. Most beetles have 2 pairs of wings. Insects don't develop wings until they become adults. Wings are just beginning to emerge on this young mantis. But in just a few weeks, they will be fully formed, and the mantis will become an even more effective predator. Some insects use their wings for things in addition to flying. The katydid makes its distinctive sound by rubbing its wings together. Honeybees cool their hives and pass odors by fanning their wings. An insect's third body part is its abdomen. It is here that you find a number of important glands and organs, including its reproductive organs. When you come upon insects, you will sometimes find them connected at the abdomen. This is how most insects mate. In addition to their sex organs, some insects also have a pair of cerci extending from their abdomens. These are sensing organs. Other insects have stings, and some, like this earwig, have pincers, which are used for defense. Some insects can expand their abdomens, enabling them to squeeze into tight places. The anal opening of an insect is found at the end of its abdomen, a very important organ, as this is how insects get rid of their waste. Some insects are called social insects. That means they live and work together. Bees live in colonies in which they bring up their young. Most honeybees today are domesticated. That means they live in artificial hives tended by beekeepers. But these bees still behave in pretty much the same way as they would if they were in the wild. Everything the bees do is dedicated to the well-being of the hive. Worker bees are constantly coming and going, flying off to find pollen and nectar, the bees' favorite foods. They may have to fly a long distance to find them. When they return, their stomachs are full of nectar and their legs are loaded down with pollen. Their job is to not only bring the nectar and pollen back, but also to tell the other bees where they found them. They do this in several ways. One way is by touching antennae. They also pass nectar from one to another. And they fan their odor to other members in the hive. But one of the most remarkable ways they communicate is by waggling. These little dances, where they first circle in one direction, then another, tell the other bees where to go to find pollen and nectar. Each hive is begun by a single queen. She's the one in the middle, who lays all the eggs. Queens are larger than the other bees in the colony. There is no king bee. Worker bees tend to the queen's every need, feeding it and cleaning it. They also tend to the queen's eggs and larvae. The larvae are the white forms you can see at the bottom of some of the cells. Larvae are the second stage in the lives of most insects. They hatch from eggs. The larvae get nearly constant attention. It is important that they grow into adult bees. You will often see adults reaching deep into cells to feed the larvae. After about a week, the bees will seal the cells with beeswax to allow the larvae to grow into adults. After another couple of weeks, the bee will begin to eat its way out of the cell. It'll take several efforts, but in a few minutes, a newly formed bee will emerge, identical to an adult in every way, except for its light color and its inability to sting. It'll be greeted by the other bees and be given a few minutes for its wings to dry out. But there's no time to waste, and the bee will be hard at work in a very short time. Bees are extremely protective of their hive. That's why some workers serve as guards to keep an eye out for intruders. It isn't long until one is discovered. A yellow jacket inside the hive itself trying to steal the bee's honey. It is overpowered by dozens of workers. They expel the yellow jacket, but one bee wants to finish the job and engages in a life and death struggle with the more powerful yellow jacket. The bee is left dazed and confused, but the fight is not over. The yellow jacket returns to finish the bee off, biting the bee over and over with its powerful jaws. The bee, exhausted, is helpless now, and the yellow jacket is able to bite it in half. Incredibly, a second yellow jacket enters the scene and steals the lower half of the bee. The first yellow jacket grabs the rest of the bee and flies off. Ants are social insects too. They live in a colony. They tend to the queen. They bring up their young. And when a colony is disturbed, the ants will always attempt to take their brood to safety. Sometimes you'll see ants scurrying about, seemingly confused. Some ants behave this way before they start a raid. They're passing on instructions, making sure each ant gets the right chemical message. Then they're off in search of an enemy to raid. They travel in columns like soldiers being led by a scout. Little can stop them. They stop at a tree stump. From their excited actions, it appears there is a rival colony under the trunk. But the colony appears to have blocked the entranceways. The ants are unable to get in, and this raid ends in failure. The next day, the ants are on the march again. This time they surround a colony which has built its nest under a rock. Members of the other colony, who are darker in color, come out to fight the invaders, but they have little success. There are too many of them, and they are too powerful. The raiders find an entrance to the nest beneath the rock, and the fighting continues. But this raid isn't about killing. The raiders are after just one thing: the unborn brood of the rival ants. The raiders are called slave-making ants. They are here to steal the brood and take them back to their own colony, where they will serve as slaves. While many types of ants go on raids, only a few capture slaves. Ants are among the fiercest fighters in the insect world. You wouldn't expect them to cooperate with other insects, but they do. These tiny green and brown insects are called aphids. They're found just about everywhere and feed on the juices of plant stems, leaves, and flowers. Ants could easily kill them, but they don't. That's because the aphids secrete a sweet liquid from their abdomens which the ants are just crazy about. In a sense, the aphids defend themselves by producing the liquid for the ants. Insects defend themselves in a number of ways. One way is by blending into their surroundings. You can see how difficult it would be for a predator to spot this insect. And look at how this cricket seems to almost disappear. Are you able to spot the insect in this scene? It's a walking stick, one of the great masters of disguise in the insect world. It even shakes a little as if it were being blown by the wind. The same for this insect from the tropics. It shakes as if it were a leaf being blown by the wind. If you think these are dead leaves drooping from this tree, look again. They're all butterflies. Tens of thousands of monarch butterflies that have migrated to this site in California from as far away as Canada. They come here every winter, and how they find their way to the same small grove of trees is a mystery. Unlike migrating birds, they've never made this trip before. These butterflies will die before the next migration. There won't be any left to show the next group where to come, but they'll get here just the same, just as they've always done. Each morning, they warm themselves in the sun, and by midday, they're practically all in flight, numbering more than 100,000, creating one of the most remarkable scenes in the insect world. Insects can be both helpful and harmful. When an insect flits from plant to plant, it carries pollen from one flower to another, which enable those plants to reproduce. Without insects, especially bees, most of the plants we're familiar with would not exist today. Insects produce important products. Bees are kept by beekeepers in artificial hives so that the honey and wax the bees produce can be gathered and sold. And who doesn't like honey? But many insects are harmful. This beautiful beetle is actually a pest and infests many plants and food crops, damaging their leaves. Aphids reproduce in such great number that they can suck most of the sap out of a plant and kill it. Caterpillars are non-stop eating machines and are responsible for destroying countless plants. And some insects, like flies, mosquitoes, and assassin bugs, are carriers of disease. These are just a few of the reasons why insects are so important and why scientists throughout the world study them, so that they can learn even more about these fascinating creatures and their incredible world. In this program, we have seen how insects belong to a group of animals called arthropods, which include spiders, centipedes, millipedes, scorpions, and many others. Insects and all other arthropods are invertebrates, have jointed legs, and have a hard outer covering called an exoskeleton. While insects have much in common with other arthropods, they have many differences. Insects are among the few arthropods which have 3 body parts: the head, thorax, and abdomen. Most other arthropods have 2 body parts. An insect can also be identified by the number of its legs. Insects have 6 legs. The head of an insect contains many of the insect's most important organs, and these include the insect's antennae, its eyes, and its mouth parts. Insect antennae are used for sensing the world around them and for communicating. Insects also sense their world through their eyes, both compound eyes and simple eyes. Insects eat in a number of different ways, including chewing and sucking. The insect's thorax is where you find its legs and wings. Insect legs are varied according to how they are used. Most adult insects have 2 pairs of wings. The insect's abdomen is where you find a number of important organs, including its reproductive organs. Most insects mate by attaching themselves at the abdomen. Some insects are called social insects, and they live and work together in colonies. Some insects defend themselves from predators by blending into their surroundings. Insects can be both helpful and harmful. They help pollinate most of the world's plants, and they produce some important products. But some insects carry disease and destroy countless plants and crops. Good or bad, we think you'll agree, insects are the most incredible creatures on Earth.